Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. Our next bowl game brings us an old Big 12 matchup as number 25 Oklahoma State takes on Texas A&M in the Texas Bowl. And each of these programs are coming off yet another successful season despite some unfortunate circumstances. When you look at Oklahoma State, they finished the year 8-4. Another great year under Mike Gundy. Wouldn't expect anything less. But they dealt with some unfortunate injuries, including their starting quarterback Spencer Sanders going down later in the year, and then losing one of the best wide receivers in the Big 12, maybe even in the entire nation, in Tylan Wallace. They've dealt with the injury and loss of him for the majority of 2019, yet still managed to go 8-4 and finish third in the Big 12. When you look at Texas A&M, they faced one of the most difficult schedules in the entire nation. We knew it was going to be a rough year for Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies, playing the likes of Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. They finished the year 7-5, did not beat a team with a winning record, and did not beat a ranked opponent this season, going 0-5 in those matchups. And those are two major stats and storylines that you need to follow and keep an eye out for in this game against the Cowboys, because the Cowboys are, yes, a ranked team and a team with a winning record. Now, I know most of those teams that A&M had to face were some of the best in the country, but still, it is a cause of concern and very eye-opening going into this Texas Bowl. Now, when you look at these two teams, two former Big 12 rivals, you're going to get two explosive offenses. We know that. The Cowboys averaging 33.4 points per game, the Aggies averaging an even 30 points per game. But over the past two games of the season, neither of these offenses looked as explosive as they've been in the past, or as they could be. Oklahoma State scoring just 36 points over their final two, and a win over West Virginia and their loss to Oklahoma. Texas A&M scoring a combined 20 points over their final two, falling by 6 to Georgia, very competitive game, and then falling 50-7 to LSU. A very uninspired game across the board for the Aggies, but they were only able to put up 169 yards against now the number one team in the country down in Death Valley. When you look at Oklahoma State, and when you think of Oklahoma State and their offense, the first name that comes to mind, or should come to mind, is Chuba Hubbard. One of the best running backs in the entire country that got absolutely no recognition when it came to the national awards. He was snubbed across the board. He wasn't going to win the Heisman. We knew that. He wasn't invited, though, which was a bit of a shock. But when it came to some of the other national awards, didn't win a single one. Very disrespected. Yet the sophomore running back put up nearly 2,000 yards. 1,936 yards and 21 touchdowns on the year. So phenomenal season from Chuba Hubbard. The major question now is, will he play in this Texas Bowl? Early inclinations are that yes, he will play against Texas A&M, but at the filming of this video, we do not know whether or not he will be suiting up against the Aggies. So you might want to check back with us later on that, see if our prediction has changed, which we will address later on. But right now he's playing, and that's what we're going with. The Cowboys, very balanced offense, 227.7 passing yards per game, 236.3 rushing yards per game, and that's to be expected when you've got a guy like Chuba Hubbard in your backfield. For Texas A&M, they are led by Kellen Mond, the junior quarterback who is a very experienced quarterback, very solid quarterback, but not the best quarterback in the SEC like he proclaimed himself to be back in the summer, putting up over 2,800 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. So solid stats, but not great. But the experience and a little bit of a dual threat capability is something that gives this Aggies offense a bit more of an explosive touch, makes them a little more dynamic. Keep in mind, while all eyes are going to be on Chuba Hubbard and this Cowboys rushing attack, A&M has a solid one themselves, averaging 151.7 rushing yards per game. So while kind of clash here, Oklahoma State relying more on the run with Hubbard, A&M passing more with Kellen Mond, they still have a good running game to complement the pass. So that is something to watch out for. Oklahoma State very balanced, but A&M right up there with them. Defensively, in a game like this with the two offenses they have, it's going to be the key. It's going to come down to which defense can make a play and whether or not A&M can shut down the run and whether Oklahoma State can take away one or the other. Oklahoma State allowing an average of 27 points per game, while A&M much better, allowing just 22.7 points per game. And that, to me, is an impressive mark considering they play in the very tough SEC West and the SEC as a whole. When you're allowing just 22.7 points per game, it's not a bad mark at all. But the keys for this game, first off, of course, is can Texas A&M stop Chuba Hubbard? Once again, assuming that he plays. The Aggies will be without their starting defensive tackle, Justin Matabike, who led the team with 5.5 sacks. Very dominant player up front for the Aggies. Will not be playing in preparation for this 2020 NFL Draft. That's a major blow for the Aggies defense. I think a lot of people, you lose one player, either whether it's due to injury or maybe because they're sitting out, and they say, it's not a big deal, we'll be just fine. When you're going up against one of the best rushing attacks in the entire country, you need a player like Matabike there to stop the run and there to pressure, whether it's Spencer Sanders or Drew Brown at quarterback for the Cowboys. It's a major loss for Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M in this one. Besides all that, though, even though they lose him, even though they're not going to have him, the Aggies are only allowing 129.1 rushing yards per game. And they have fared well against some very solid rushing teams, holding Georgia to under 100 rushing yards in that 19-13 loss in Athens. And then did a fairly good job of bottling up Travis Etienne at Clemson way back at the beginning of this 2019 season. And if they are able to stop Chuba Hubbard, you then begin to question, can Texas A&M stop this passing game, whether it's Drew Brown, as we mentioned, who started the final two games of the season, or Spencer Sanders, who could be back from injury, had surgery on that thumb. Very good chance that he could be back in time for the Texas Bowl. For Oklahoma State, the question that I have for them was more of a defensive question for Texas A&M. My question I have for the Cowboys and Mike Gundy is, will their offense be able to click, and will they be fully 100%? There are a lot of questions that we are probably not going to have answered until closer to game time, which is another reason you might want to check back with us as we get closer to this Texas Bowl. Will Chuba Hubbard play? That's the million-dollar question, a factor that could very well determine whether Oklahoma State wins or loses this game. Will Spencer Sanders be back in time? He was really hitting his stride as a first-year starter for the Cowboys before going down with that injury. I hated to see such a talented player who was not only thriving in the passing game without Tylan Wallace, but was also really improving as a dual-threat quarterback, really improving on the running as well. So will he be back? And if he does play, will he be 100% or will he struggle in his first game back in nearly a month? And if he doesn't play, will Drew Brown do fine stepping in? He played well over the final two games, throwing for 403 yards and 2 touchdowns, but will he be able to handle the big stage of a bowl game under the national spotlight? And will he be able to get the Cowboys into the end zone? Something they were unable to do against Oklahoma, settling for too many field goals, which ended up being their downfall as they fell by 18 to the Sooners now in the college football playoff. So those are going to be the keys for Oklahoma State. What's their offense going to look like? Will players be ready to go? And can they convert? Can they take advantage of these opportunities and finally get the ball in the end zone? Because as we all know, 7 is way better than 3. So our pick for this game, once again, solely relies on what happens with Oklahoma State. I don't think, you're going to miss anybody for Texas A&M other than Matabike on that defensive line. Right now, we are picking the Cowboys. Right now, at the time of this video, after everything we have said and everything we know, we are going with Oklahoma State, who currently is a 7-point underdog to the Aggies out of the SEC. Believe it or not, Oklahoma State is a ranked team with a winning record, something that Texas A&M has struggled against all season long. They have failed to beat a ranked team and a team with a winning record. Oklahoma State has both of those. Oklahoma State, this game being played in Houston, they will travel well. Same to go with Texas A&M. I'm expecting a very good split with the fan base there, so it's going to be a great environment down in Houston. But assuming Chuba Hubbard plays, I expect him to have a great day on the ground. No one has really been able to shut down Chuba Hubbard all season long. And I don't think Texas A&M will do that, especially with missing one of their key pieces up front on the defensive line. He is just 64 yards away from 2,000 yards on the season. He will eclipse that by the end of the first half, if not earlier. Mike Gundy gets his 10th bowl victory. He's 9-4 in postseason games coming into this one. He will clinch his 10th bowl victory, and Oklahoma State will clinch a 9-4 season in a very high-scoring Texas Bowl. It's going to be a phenomenal game. Old Big 12 rivalry. You love to see games like that. But in the end, Gundy and the Cowboys get the most out of Texas A&M, get the best of Texas A&M, assuming that their key offensive players show up and are able to play in the Texas Bowl down in Houston. Once again, check back with us on that if things do change. But right now, we're picking the Cowboys in the upset to take home the Texas Bowl trophy. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here on YouTube. Make sure to like this video and check out everything we have for you in the description below. We've got the spread pick for the Texas Bowl as well as every other bowl game over at thegridironexpert.com, so do not miss out on that, as well as all the other college football content and offers we have for you in the description. So don't miss out on any of it. And as always, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.